So on today's episode of Taking Back My Strength, I've got my lovely pastor Sue Griffins from London Life, and I'm going to be, interviewing her about if she's been in any circumstances where she felt like, she has to take back her power. What did it feel like? What was the steps that led her to taking back her power? And if she can give any advice. So thank you, Sue, for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you, Chitty, for asking me. I feel very privileged to be on your podcast. It's an amazing thing that you're doing, and your questions, I think, are really powerful questions. They're really important questions, and it's always lovely to hear how you get that inspiration. So thank you for having me.
No problem. So, can you give the listeners an example of a situation where you felt like, do you know what, enough is enough. I've been letting certain people or certain situations take my power, and I've just had enough.
Yes, well, so as you know, I'm isolating at the moment because we have a family member who's got COVID. So that takes your sort of freedom away, and is a very present thing that I'm sort of dealing with now. But I think you're sort of, although that is a struggle, and you have to set your mind to deal with it, and not just, get angry or whatever. I think your podcast and your question is about possibly more serious things.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, COVID is very serious, but fortunately, our family are well and recovering and everything. So, but I think, when you're in maybe a dysfunctional situation, where relationships have gone wrong, I think that's really hard, isn't it? And that's where you can feel stifled or put in a position where you can't be there any longer and things like that. And I suppose when I was in my early 20s, I was in a job where it was a startup business, and so it was only me and the boss there, and that was quite a difficult situation. Once I found out that he had started to like me, and he was a family man with young children, and there was like no way that I wanted to be involved. And he was a Christian as well. He didn't want to be to take anything further, but it made this situation very awkward, and I think I was devastated as well. I think emotionally I was really upset by the whole thing, and I didn't know what to do, and so I left. But that's quite something, isn't it, to have to change your job, to have to get out of the situation, and I think so that's been my experience. I'm sure there's been other things where I think, there's been other times where with work, or it's been very pressurized, or can't think off the top of my head other situations, but I think those are possibly maybe that other people might relate to, things where I've had to change my life through no fault of mine, sort of, put in a situation which made it quite awkward.
So like, at that time, did you feel like leaving the job was the only option you had? Like, did you feel like, okay, well, if I talk to this guy and maybe explain how I felt, maybe explain to him that like his actions or lack of actions, if I explained to him, then it would make me feel uncomfortable? Did you feel like if I did it that way, then that could maybe save your job, or was it just, or wasn't you prepared to go down that road and you just thought, you know what, I need to remove myself from the situation completely?
Yeah, I think because it was only me and him working in the place, I think I come from a broken home. So my parents' relationship had broken down. And so it probably jarred on a lot of those sort of things inside of me, frightened me, actually. And I didn't want to be part of splitting up any other family. And I found that, really hard. So he didn't ask me to leave, but I kind of immediately, because it was just me and him working together, I felt really uncomfortable, and I felt I had no choice. I had to leave. I had to look, what is my next step? Where can I go? Without putting myself in a place that to look for something else. And obviously when you've got a job, it gives you some security.
Yeah.
And you've got money coming in and whatever. And I was young, and so I looked for opportunity. And I think over the years, what I discovered is sometimes, you're forced to do take a different direction in your life, or do something different. And for me, my faith comes in, and I feel like that God is in control, even though I'm not. That actually He can use the situation for my good. He can, that there, rather than just like with COVID, actually, just like there is opportunity here. And although it's been tragic and it's been awful, that there is also opportunity and other things to find in the middle of it all. And I always remember there's a quote of I haven't got it right, I don't know, but somebody said something that, we have, whatever situation we have in it, we find ourselves in, that nobody can take away your right to choose your attitude and to choose a positive attitude. And I think that's something, because if we can allow a situation to dominate us and to dominate our emotions and just everything. But actually, you read stories of people even in like concentration camps who were able to thank God for things, or, find positivity, and even though everything had been stripped away from them. And I suppose I take those as my inspiration is, well, God, what have you got for me in here? Even if I'm in a pit, or or where there doesn't seem to be a lot of hope, there is still hope, and what is it? Where's the door opening? What can I do? Or what, you know, what is there to understand differently? I suppose, you know, sometimes, you know, it's understanding a situation differently, or things like that. So I mean, I ended up, after that job, I left that job, and I took a year where I travelled, and I worked with an organisation that had a ship and went into third world countries, and I did that for voluntarily, so I didn't earn money, but I did that for a year, and I would say that was quite something for a very shy young woman who probably lived, although she came from a broken home, you know, I was an only child, so I was quite protected in some ways, you know, so it was probably quite a big thing really for me then, and it was a big thing for my mum, I know. But I think, you know, it part of contributed to who I am today, and made me a bit more adventurous, and like you said earlier, you know, actually makes you stronger, doesn't it? Because, you know, bad things get thrown at you. It's not reality, is it, to live without bad things happening in the world. Bad things happen, and it's our resilience. It's how do we deal with this? How can we move on? How can we build good out of something that's seemingly gone wrong?
So what advice would you give to people that are going through a situation where they feel like their power has been taken away from them?
So what would advice I give? I would say that I think a lot of battles are won in our mind, and I'd say that gratefulness is a really powerful thing. So to look for the good. What can you see that's good? Not to say, don't change and say, oh, you know, this oppressive relationship is good. Don't say that. No, if it's wrong, it's wrong. So name it. But look for good, and look for ways out that will bring strength, and will it might not be comfortable to get out of the situation, but I think sometimes you have to look for opportunities, good opportunities. And then I would also say that forgiveness is really underestimated, and really a very powerful thing. So if you move on and you still carry anger or bitterness or resentment to the person, I would say that you haven't really moved on, and because that can actually carry on affecting your life. So I would say to explore what is forgiveness. It's not saying, oh, it didn't matter then, or minimizing it and just putting it under the rug, you know, sweeping it under the rug, as they say. It's not saying that. Certainly not from a Christian point of view, because it's saying this was wrong. Actually, it was wrong. It was wrong of you to behave like that towards me. It was wrong. And actually, it damaged, and it cost, and but rather than come to you to get the, you know, you owe me, you owe me, and you can go, you know, that I'll go to Jesus and I'll allow Jesus to pay for them. And that's at that point, then I realized that it cost. It wasn't free, but they did. And all the things that I do, it's not free. It cost Jesus life. So that's where I get my strength, and where so I practice. There's two things I practice gratefulness, thanking, just having thankful times, you know, what just and I think, you know, this time of isolation has been good to realize what I've got, you know, because we're so busy. We're running around, and you don't realize what you've got. You're always looking for this and trying to get that, and, you know, whatever. And actually I've got so much, you know, and have just my family, my children, you know, and my home, and you know, that I can write, that I can talk, you know. We were saying the other day, we can have conversations like this, you know, we've got the internet, you know, which has allowed us to do so much during this time. Yeah. So grateful, thankfulness. And then the second thing has been practicing being thankful each day, and practicing forgiveness, because forgiveness doesn't just like, oh yeah, you really peed me off and whatever, but I'm going to choose to do it, and then that's it. Because the next morning when I wake up or something happens, that person comes to your heart, mind, yeah, and you think, you know, what you did, you know, and it's still, you know, yeah. It's like, and so it's a practice. It's like, okay, and when you practice it, then you start to understand it. You start to understand the power, and you start to understand what it is we're meant to be dishing out or passing on, so we can pass on. So, okay, you were wrong, that's why you need forgiveness. So you were wrong, that's why I'm going to give you forgiveness. And I don't have it in me. My heart is fairly shriveled up and can be quite hard. I don't have it, but I will let Jesus's forgiveness. I won't stop that going to you. I'm going to let it go to you. And so I think they're the two things that I learn the most from being in hard times. Like I look for things. So I'm in a hard time, and I'll look, God, where are you? What can I be grateful for? Where is the goodness here? And then the second thing is, who do I need to forgive? You know, and sometimes I need to forgive myself as well. So sometimes, you know, and you know, we all fail, and it's just being, I think as I've practiced it, I'm starting to become a bit more generous with forgiveness. You know, I don't hold people quite so much to account, and I can be a bit more free with it. Yeah, you disappointed me then, you know, you didn't phone me or something or whatever, but you know, I'm let it go. I let it go. And sometimes you don't even have to speak to people, and sometimes you do have to speak to people, but to go with forgiveness is a powerful thing. I think that's it.
Yeah, no, it is, and I'm learning how to forgive. There's a few people in my circle that I don't want to forgive at the moment, but I'm learning.
Tell me about.
Yeah, I'm learning how to forgive them, and yeah, it takes a lot. It takes a lot, Well, yeah.
Yeah, it does take a lot, but I think I always knew I didn't have it in me. I don't have forgiveness in me, you know. I was very angry with my parents, and I didn't have forgiveness in me. But when I met Jesus, and it kind of gradually softened me, actually, and made me realize that I could give his love. You know, when I was out of love, he has it. So I'll give you his. You don't want mine. I'll give you his.
Well, thank you very much, Sue, for this podcast.
That's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to chat to you, Tiddy. It's wonderful, and I think you're doing a good job there.
Thank you.